The first explosion hit just before dawn, the kind that rattled your bones before your ears could even register the sound. Sand leapt into the air like a living thing, slapping against steel and flesh alike. Somewhere ahead, a tank engine screamed, coughed, and then died in a choking plume of black smoke. Bullets cracked across the horizon, sharp and angry. Slicing the silence into pieces, he was under a half-collapsed maintenance tent when it happened, hands deep inside a crate of spare parts, grease already smeared across his knuckles. He didn't flinch at first. He had learned long ago that panic wasted time, and time was the one thing war never gave back. He slowly stood, wiped his hands on an oil-soaked rag, and looked toward the burning tank. "I'm just a mechanic," he muttered, almost to himself. The radio on the table burst to life with frantic shouting. A voice, raw with fear, kept repeating the same words over and over. "Armor 1 is down. Armor 1 is dead in the sand. We're pinned. We're pinned." The mechanic picked up the radio, listened for a moment, then set it back down. Around him, soldiers ran, boots pounding against hard ground, weapons clutched tight. Medics dragged a wounded man past the tent, his blood dark against the pale dust. Somewhere a commander was yelling orders that were already out of date. The tank burning in the distance wasn't just any tank. It was the lead vehicle, the shield meant to punch through the ambush and carry the rest of the unit forward. Without it, they were exposed. Without it, the road ahead was a death sentence. He grabbed his tool bag. Someone shouted at him as he moved. "Where do you think you're going?" He didn't stop walking. To work. The battlefield stretched wide and unforgiving between him and the disabled tank. There was no cover, no clever route, just open ground and incoming fire. Every instinct screamed at him to stay low, to wait, to let someone else handle it. But no one else knew that tank the way he did. He had rebuilt its engine with his own hands months ago, memorized every rattle and hiss, every weakness hidden beneath armor plating that a shell hit close enough to knock him off his feet. He rolled, came up coughing, sand in his mouth, ears ringing. He forced himself to stand again and kept moving. The tank loomed larger now, its massive shape scarred and blackened. Flames licked at the rear, but the fire hadn't fully taken hold. Smoke poured out in thick waves, making his eyes sting. The crew hatch was open. "Hey," he shouted. "Anyone alive in there?" A helmeted head appeared, then another. The commander's face was streaked with soot and sweat, eyes wild. "We took a hit to the engine," he yelled. "Controls are dead. We can't move." The mechanic climbed onto the hull as bullets sparked against the armor. He slammed the hatch shut behind him and dropped inside. The air was hot, cramped, thick with the smell of fuel and burned metal. The engine compartment was a nightmare of twisted parts and leaking fluid. He knelt, ignoring the heat, and started tearing panels loose. "What are you doing?" the gunner demanded. "I'm fixing it." "You can't fix this out here." He didn't look up. "I can." Another impact rocked the tank, throwing him sideways. He hit his shoulder hard but gritted his teeth and pushed through the pain. His hands moved automatically, years of training and experience guiding them. He found the damaged fuel line first, split wide from shrapnel. Fuel dripped steadily, a ticking clock counting down to disaster. He ripped open his tool bag, fingers flying. The sound of gunfire outside felt distant now, like a storm heard from underwater. All that existed was the engine, broken and bleeding, and his own steady breathing. "I need a clamp," he said. The loader scrambled, handing him whatever he could find. The mechanic worked fast, sealing the line, wiping his hands clean enough to feel the vibration of the engine block. He whispered to it, an old habit, as if it were a stubborn animal that needed calming. Outside, the infantry was taking heavy fire. Without the tank moving, they were trapped. The mechanic reached deeper into the compartment and froze. The main drive belt was shredded, hanging in useless ribbons. Without it, the engine would never turn power into motion. He leaned back, exhaustion crashing into him all at once. For a brief moment, doubt crept in. This was beyond a quick fix. This was the kind of damage meant for a workshop, not a battlefield. A round struck the tank so hard the metal screamed. Dust fell from the ceiling. "Please," the commander said quietly. "If we don't move, we're dead." The mechanic closed his eyes. "I'm just a mechanic," he whispered again. Then he opened them, grabbed a spare belt from his bag, and went back to work. It didn't fit. Not perfectly. It was the wrong size, meant for a different model. He swore under his breath, measured it against the pulleys, then made a decision that would make any manual scream in protest. He cut it. Working by feel, he shortened the belt, reinforced it with wire and clamps, his hands burning as they brushed against hot metal. It was ugly, improvised, risky, but sometimes ugly was enough. Get ready, he said. When I tell you. He tightened the final clamp, wiped sweat from his eyes, and slapped the engine housing. Now, the engine coughed. Once, twice. Then it roared back to life, vibrations surging through the tank like a heartbeat restarting. The crew stared at him. The commander laughed, a wild, disbelieving sound. You did it. Don't celebrate yet, the mechanic said. Move. Now. The tank lurched forward, treads biting into the sand. Outside, soldiers cheered, their voices cutting through the chaos. The tank rolled into position, cannons swinging toward the enemy. A deafening blast followed, then another. The mechanic stayed inside for a moment longer, listening to the engine hold steady. Only when he was sure it wouldn't fail again did he climb out. The world outside was still violent, but the balance had shifted. With the tank back in action, the ambush was breaking. Enemy fire slackened, then scattered. He slid down the hull, boots hitting the ground hard. His legs trembled now that the adrenaline was fading. A soldier grabbed him by the arm to steady him. Who are you? The soldier asked. The mechanic shrugged. Just the guy who fixes things. Hours later, when the shooting had stopped and the wounded were being evacuated, he sat on a crate near the repaired tank. His hands shook as he cleaned his tools. The delayed fear finally catching up to him one by one. Soldiers came over to him. They didn't say much. Some just nodded. One offered him a canteen. Another clapped him on the shoulder and walked away. The commander stood in front of him, helmet tucked under his arm. You saved my crew, he said. You saved all of us. The mechanic looked up at the tank, now quiet, its scars visible in the fading light. It was my job. No, the commander said. That was more than a job. Night fell over the battlefield, heavy and cold. Fires burned low, casting flickering shadows. The mechanic lay on his back, staring at the stars, replaying the moment the engine had come back to life, the impossible becoming real. He didn't sleep much that morning. Word had spread. Soldiers from other units stopped by, curious to see the tank that had come back from the dead. Some looked at him like he was something more than human, that he didn't like that. I'm just a mechanic, he kept saying. But even as he said it, he knew something had changed. War had a way of revealing what people truly were when there was no time to pretend. If you're watching this story on the YouTube channel Her Battlefield Legacy, don't forget to subscribe for more powerful war stories that reveal the unseen heroes behind the front lines. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? The orders came just after sunrise, carried by a runner whose face was too young for the dust and blood streaked across it. A new push, a narrow corridor through enemy-held ground. Armor and infantry moving together, no delays, no mistakes. The kind of mission where everything that could go wrong usually did. The mechanic listened without interrupting, nodding once when the runner finished. He packed his tools in silence, checked every latch twice, then slung the bag over his shoulder. Around him, soldiers prepared with the quiet urgency of people who knew what waited ahead. No speeches, no brevado, just the ritual of survival. The tank he had repaired stood nearby, its crew already climbing aboard. Fresh scorch marks stained the armor, and the improvised belt he'd built hummed softly beneath the metal skin. It held steady. For now. You riding with us? The commander asked. The mechanic hesitated. He had planned to stay with the support vehicles, where mechanics were supposed to be, where it was safer. Then the engine note changed, just slightly. A whisper of strain only someone who had rebuilt it could hear. He climbed up and dropped inside. The column moved out in a cloud of dust and noise, tracks grinding, boots marching in uneven rhythm. The land ahead was broken and cruel, dotted with the ruins of old buildings and the skeletons of burned-out vehicles from earlier fights. It was a place that remembered violence. The first hit came fast, and explosion tore through the lead infantry line, sending bodies scattering for cover. The tank shuddered as shrapnel rattled against its armor like hail. The gunner returned fire, the cannon's blast punching the air flat. Inside the tank, the mechanic braced himself, one hand pressed against the engine housing, feeling for changes. Heat climbed quickly, too quickly. "We're running hot," he shouted. "We can't stop," the commander yelled back. "We stop, we die." The mechanic swallowed and nodded, though no one could see him. He stripped off his gloves and reached in, fingers grazing metal, so hot it burned skin. He bit back a cry, focused on the rhythm of the engine. Adjusted a valve, tightened a clamp. Another explosion rocked the tank, this one closer. The loader was thrown against the wall, cursing as he scrambled back into position. Outside, the infantry was pinned again, enemy fire pouring in from elevated positions. The tank surged forward, becoming the only moving shield between them and slaughter. Then the engine coughed. Once, twice, the sound froze the mechanic's blood. "Don't you dare," he whispered, pressing his forehead against the metal. The engine sputtered, then steadied. Barely. The tank crested a small rise, and the battlefield opened up in brutal clarity. Enemy fighters scrambled, shocked by the armor pushing through. The cannon fired again and again, each shot carving a path forward. The mechanic exhaled slowly. They might make it. They didn't. A deafening crack split the air as an anti-armor round slammed into the side of the tank. The impact threw everyone inside off balance. Warning lights flared. Smoke flooded the compartment. "We're hit," someone shouted. The tank lurched and stopped dead. Outside, the world erupted. The mechanic was already moving, ripping open panels, choking on smoke. Fuel sprayed from a ruptured line, pooling dangerously close to exposed heat. One spark and the tank would become a coffin. "Evacuate," the commander ordered. "No," the mechanic yelled. "Give me 1 minute." "That's an order." He looked up, eyes wild. "If you leave this tank here, they'll overrun the infantry." 1 minute. "Please." The commander hesitated. That single pause stretched into an eternity under fire. 30 seconds, he said. The mechanic didn't waste them. He worked with savage speed, tearing off his own sleeve to wrap a cracked hose, sealing it with whatever he could grab. His hands shook, not from fear, but from the sheer overload of exhaustion and pain. He felt blood on his fingers and didn't know if it was his. Rounds slammed into the tank, denting armor, screaming for attention. Someone outside pounded on the hull, screaming to get out. Almost the mechanic gasped. He slammed the panel shut, twisted back into position, and shouted, "Start it." Nothing happened. His heart dropped. "Again," he screamed. The engine turned over, slow and reluctant. Smoke thickened. The smell of fuel was overwhelming. Again, the engine caught. The tank roared back to life, louder than before, as if furious at being wounded. The mechanic laughed, a broken sound torn from his chest. "Move," he yelled. The tank surged forward just as another round struck the ground where it had been seconds earlier. Dirt and fire swallowed the empty space behind them. They pushed through the kill zone like a beast refusing to die, armor scarred, engines screaming in protest. The infantry followed in its wake, using its bulk as cover, inch by bloody inch. By the time the fighting finally broke and the enemy scattered, the tank was barely holding together. The mechanic slumped against the wall, strength gone, vision dimming at the edges. He didn't remember the tank stopping. He woke up on a stretcher, the sky spinning slowly above him. A medic leaned over, shouting his name, checking his eyes. "Easy," the medic said. "You're safe." The mechanic turned his head weakly. The tank was visible in the distance, surrounded by soldiers. Still standing, he smiled, then passed out again. When he woke the second time, it was night. A field hospital buzzed with low voices and pain. His hands were bandaged, burns wrapped carefully. Every muscle ached. The commander stood at the foot of his bed. "They're saying you should get a medal," the commander said quietly. The mechanic snorted. "For doing my job? For saving dozens of lives." "Twice." He stared at the ceiling. "I didn't pick up a rifle." "You picked up something heavier," the commander replied. "Responsibility." Word spread faster than he could stop it. Soldiers came to see him, some just to look, others to say thank you. He tried to wave them off, uncomfortable with the attention. "I'm just a mechanic," he told them all. But the words felt thinner now. Days later, as the unit prepared to move again, the tank crew visited him together. The gunner placed something on his bed, a patch from the tank, scorched and torn. "We want you to have this," the gunner said. "You're part of the crew." The mechanic swallowed hard and nodded. He was discharged back to support duty. Orders clear. No more frontline repairs. The commanders didn't want to lose him. Not like that. He obeyed. Mostly, every time a vehicle limped back damaged, he was there. Every time an engine failed under pressure, his hand steadied it. He became a quiet anchor in the chaos, the person people looked for when things went wrong. The war moved on. Battles blurred together. Losses piled up, and then, one evening, as he sat cleaning his tools, a young soldier approached him, nervous. "They say you can fix anything," the soldier said. The mechanic looked up. "No," he replied gently. "I just don't quit." The soldier nodded like that meant everything. When the war finally ended, there were no parades waiting for him. No cameras. Just a long ride home and the silence that followed. Sometimes, late at night, he still heard the engine coughing, felt the heat of metal under his palms, smelled fuel and smoke. Sometimes he wondered what would have happened if he'd stayed under that tent and said nothing. But he knew the answer. If you're watching this story on our battlefield legacy, subscribe to the channel for more true-to-the-heart war stories about the unseen heroes who keep others alive. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from?